Thank you, Secretary. Good morning, everybody. I'm Kevin Kennedy. I'm the Director and General Counsel for Wisconsin's Government Accountability Board. I've had the honor of being Wisconsin's Chief Election Official for 32 years. And I do want to acknowledge at the beginning that in Wisconsin, we are very strongly committed, both at the state and local level, for the delivery of ballots to our overseas and military voters. And we have one person on our staff who's our voter services coordinator who's been sitting in all these committee meetings, or when I can't get to the committee meetings. Her name is up there, but she's also in the audience. Megan McCord-Wolf has been a valuable contributor to the committee as well on this. The top priority for state and local election officials, and particularly with the Government Accountability Board, is to ensure that we can get ballots to our overseas and to our military electors. Our working group, on the federal postcard, the FPCA, this is one of those that it's much easier to use the acronym than to ever say the federal postcard application form. And Secretary Wyman talked a lot about communication and the group we deal with. This is a piece of paper, although it exists in electronic form. This is the piece of paper that's been at the cornerstone of getting ballots. It serves as a registration form and as an application form. And the committee came up with two recommendations with this paper aspect of the process, because, like it or not, we're always going to be living with paper. And one of those, because of the diversity of treatment of the FPCA, is that the working group recommends that all states accept this as a request for voter registration, and that the names are added to the official list. We have a lot of states where it's a temporary application. And our second recommendation is that there be each state have a standard default period of time. Federal legislation used to require that the application was good for 2 years. In Wisconsin, we had extended it for 6 years, 3 federal election cycles. What we learned in a big change with the MOVE Act was, with such a mobile population, that was really creating more problems with outdated information on our voter rolls. And so the MOVE Act recommends 1 year. We recommend all states go to a default period of 1 year, and that it runs through December 31st of the federal election year. When I say 1 year, I mean one election cycle on that. You'll notice that I have check marks next to those two recommendations because Wisconsin can check those boxes off. And all of the recommendations that you have here are really lined up to play off against each other. And what I'd like to do for the rest of my talk is sort of just show you how this plays out in Wisconsin, because each state with their little tweaks in the law, the reason we came up with these two recommendations, you can see it illustrated with how it plays out in Wisconsin and how some of the other recommendations that this committee has made. So a little background on Wisconsin. Up until the Help America Vote Act in 2006, in our municipalities with a population of 5,000 or less, there was no voter registration requirement. We looked like North Dakota. People walked into the polling place, and they didn't even have to say their name and address because the poll worker said, "Hi, Kevin, how are you?" Or, "Didn't you just move into the old Smith farm?" They recognized you if they didn't know who you were. And we didn't need voter registration. And one of the things that our legislature said is voter registration is a barrier to getting a ballot. So in Wisconsin, we're not going to require our military voters to have to register. Our overseas voters, we had that requirement if they lived in a municipality of more than 5,000. The law changed with the Help America Vote Act. We built a statewide voter registration system, but we kept the requirement that military voters do not have to be registered to be on our voter list. We technically call it a military and overseas voter list, but in practice, it's integrated to our statewide voter registration system. Other pluses and minuses to this. One, it's one less piece of paper that the military elector has to do, and in a state like Wisconsin that has election day registration, it also means that there's not a barrier for when you ask for your ballot. Federal law says 30 days. Wisconsin, it's now 28 days. Before, but it used to be 10 days was your requirement. And military electors, we let them request a ballot even on election day because of electronic delivery and counting ballots that come in 3 days later. So that's the plus. The minus to that is for a local election official to service a military elector, they really need all of the information that you're going to have on the FPCA, which dovetails with the information you need on a registration form. So it's kind of ironic we say they don't have to register, but we still need to know your name, what your voting address is, date of birth, a Wisconsin driver's license number if you have it, all that information. So even though we have that requirement, the main advantage to it is, well, none of the other deadlines really apply as far as requesting the absentee ballot. In Wisconsin, we do not operate at the municipal level. We operate at we don't operate at the county level, we operate at the municipal level. We have 1,853 towns, cities, and villages where that clerk is the local election official. And this presents us some interesting challenges when you look at dealing with the FPCA. That's a little picture there, but what we find is that, I have to look at the notes from here, that we have, 700 municipalities is where all the voters are concentrated. We have about 5,000 people on our list, but they're all in only 700 municipalities, and it changes. What we're going to see as we get into the next election, we project that we'll send out 4,000 absentee ballots to military and overseas electors, and about 1,500 of those are going to be based on the FPCA. This is what our experience was in 2012 and 2014, just with FPCA ballots. And you can see what a drop-off there was from that 1,400 applications to how many ballots got sent out, and how many were returned, and how many of those were counted. And this is just tied to our ballots with the FPCA. And so it's important to focus on this process, but that's only about 40% of all of our military and overseas ballots are generated off the FPCA. If you take a look at this, 82% of our local election officials have not issued dealt with an FPCA ballot based on the statistics we have gathered. And you note those are Green Bay Packer colors. One of our challenges is going to be reaching out in a presidential election year to all of our local election officials to make sure that they are familiar with the FPCA. And we devote an awful lot of resources to this, and this is where Megan really takes the lead. We have a series of year-round webinars and training events because not only do we have 1,853 town, city, and village clerks, but our 72 county clerks get involved in their deputies. So over 2,000 people that we're going to be reaching out and training and sending web and email alerts to this. What we learned was that as good as we are at reaching out to our locals, as few as 5 municipalities can put us in the crosshairs of the U.S. Department of Justice. And so we've dealt with the U.S. Department of Justice with a very small number of people who didn't get their ballots out within that 45 delivery time. And in Wisconsin, we actually give them 47 days because we recognize 45 days is a Saturday. Some places don't have mail. A lot of clerks don't work that day. So we tell our clerks under state law, you have to have that ballot out 47 days before or within 24 hours after you get a request on that. But even with that, when you're dealing with 1,853 municipal clerks, a handful of them can get us spending a lot of time with the Department of Justice. One of the challenges that we saw with the FPCA, there are 50 pages of written materials to provide to military and overseas voters and how to fill it out with the variations among the states. So we've looked at an alternative that this dovetails with some of the other recommendations on how we can drive people to doing much more electronic use of this. We've developed MyVote Wisconsin using a federal grant through the Department of Defense where military and overseas individuals can complete their registration or their FPCA request online, have their ballot delivered to them. And we pointed out that we have about 1,500 of our 5,000 that are still giving the paper ones. The rest we are driving to MyVote Wisconsin. The beauty of this is it's an instantaneous delivery of the ballot. They still have to get it back to our office. But when they go to MyVote Wisconsin, they can make a request for the ballot. They get their ballot. Overseas voters can do the registration. It's all standardized. Most importantly, with 1,853 municipal clerks, what you end up getting is the correct clerk information. Even in Wisconsin, if you're living in a rural township, your post office address might be the larger city, and people, they're not paying attention, particularly these 20 and 22-year-olds who are, that we're putting out in harm's way. The last thing they're thinking about is, what's the name of my town, or what's my town clerk? They can get all of this directly off our website. It's all pre-filled for them. We notify the clerks that the request has been made and that you can expect the absentee ballot. It gets into our statewide voter registration system for voter, so that they can track everything online and know when the ballot's been sent out and when it's been received. So when I started, I said, there are 4 sets of recommendations, and I got the paper one with our working group on this. But with the paper, we found we really want to drive them away from that.